The para-elemental plane of smoke, also known as the Great Conflagration, is said to be the most mysterious of the para-elemental planes. It is called a para-elemental plane because it exists between two major elemental planes, in this case, the planes of air and fire. Here, the fire chokes out the air, turning it into an infinite realm of toxic vapors. So, before I get into the plane's description, I want to clear a couple things up. In 5th edition, the plane of smoke is instead called the plane of ash. This is confusing, since in 1st and 2nd edition, the plane of ash is actually a completely different plane, being the quasi-elemental plane between the plane of fire and the negative energy plane. 5th edition doesn't have the quasi-planes, so I guess they figured it wouldn't matter, but since this video covers lore from all editions, it is confusing. Also, fire and air don't make ash. There needs to be a physical, solid object to be burned to create ash. Fire and air would make smoke, so even then it doesn't really make any sense. Either way, for this video, and basically every video I make, I will refer to this plane as the plane of smoke. And if I ever mention the plane of ash, I am specifically referring to the quasi-elemental plane from 1st and 2nd edition. Another disclaimer I want to get out of the way real quick is that 3rd and 4th edition did not have the para-elemental planes. Additionally, while 5th edition does have them, their lore is basically a paragraph each and mostly just information that already existed. So 99% of the information in this video will be from 1st and 2nd edition. The para-elemental plane of smoke is an endless realm of hot, toxic, foul-smelling vapors. It is similar to the plane of air in the sense that it is an endless expanse of gas with no gravity and little solid ground, but obviously this gas is not crisp, clear air. Instead, it is opaque, choking, and lethal. The little solid ground that exists here isn't technically solid or ground, but instead soft, flaky, brittle cinders. In 5th edition, the plane is described as a wall of flames, ash, and smoke that's constantly battered by winds, but I couldn't find mentions of wind in the other editions. They say that rare magical vapors can be found here, such as fumes that imbue power, curative effects, or are simply pleasant. Someone created a magic item called a smoke box that specifically lets you capture gases, as containing gases is normally quite difficult. And they say it can even capture mist vampires, vapor rats, and other gaseous creatures. As you move away from the center of the plane and towards the elemental plane of fire, the plane of smoke gets hotter and hotter, until becoming as hot as the plane of fire but without the flames, in a border region called the Scald. Creatures here take 1d10 damage per round from the heat. The region that borders the plane of air is called the Eternal Haze, consisting of thick, poisonous vapors. It is technically cleaner than the smoke of the rest of the plane, but only barely. Instead of dying outright from inhaling the fumes, breathing in the Eternal Haze allows one a save each round. On a failure, you still die from suffocation, but on a success, you instead only take 1d10 damage. Towards the quasi-elemental plane of ash, which is the plane between the negative energy plane and the elemental plane of fire, is an area of swirling flakes called the Embers. They resemble the embers floating above campfires and sear and blister any flesh that comes in contact with them. By the quasi-plane of vacuum, which lies between the negative energy plane and the plane of air, is the Gray Way, a region of gray vapors which aesthetically resembles the Eternal Haze. However, these vapors are not toxic. Instead, they consume the intelligence of anyone who breathes them, causing hallucinations and violent madness. This condition, called Gray Mind, causes the victim to be unable to distinguish between living and non-living, good and evil, and kindness and brutality. The 7th level 2nd edition spell Restoration, or similar magic, is required to cure it. Towards the quasi-plane of radiance, which lies between the positive energy plane and the plane of fire, is an expanse of pure darkness, save for the motes of energy that dance in the void like fireflies. It is a place where light and darkness intertwine, known as the Sea of Stars. The final border region is next to the quasi-plane of lightning, which is the quasi-plane between air and positive energy. As you approach, the light darkens and brilliant waves of colors streak across the sky. It is known as the Aurora, and is said to be one of the most beautiful sights in the multiverse. Okay, I'm going to interrupt really quick, but I promise we'll be right back to the video in a few seconds. I just want to remind you that if you are enjoying the video, you should give it a like and leave a comment, as those really help the algorithm. I read all the comments, so feel free to tell me something you think is cool, something you hate, or something cool going on in your D&D campaign right now. Additionally, if you want to support me outside of YouTube, I do have a Patreon for just $5 a month. Okay, back to the Plane of Smoke. Travel. Getting here. So how does one get to the paraplane of smoke? Well, you have the normal means of plane traveling, such as a door and sigil, or spells such as gate or plane shift. If using plane shift, the material component is a tuning fork made of bronze and tuned to the note A. Of course, you can also enter a bordering plane, such as air, fire, or the ethereal plane, and travel to the plane of smoke from there using traditional means of transportation. If using the ethereal plane, one must find and proceed through an ethereal curtain the color of pearl. There are a few known permanent portals that lead to the paraplane of smoke. One lies in Bitopia, but the denizens only let through those who prove they are of good character and complete a task specifically tailored to ensure they're worthy to use the gate. Rumors say this gate was built by the gnomish gods Garl Glittergold and Flandel Steelskin, and the council that guards it allows gnomes to use it free of charge. The key needed to activate this gate is a gnome's breath. Not wanting to be outdone by the gnome pantheon, Moradin, chief deity of dwarves, built his own portal to the plane of smoke in Mount Celestia. It is a ring of solid iron, sculpted in a way to resemble rippling wisps of smoke called the smoke ring. The key needed to use it is the touch of either Moradin himself, one of his proxies, or one of his most powerful priests, and their touch must be willing. Another way of entering this plane are elemental vortices. An elemental vortex is a portal that forms in high concentrations of elements on the prime material plane that then lead to the corresponding element's plane. Vortices to the paraplane of smoke are found in regions choked with vapors such as volcanic vents. Within. So once you get to the plane of smoke, how do you go about traversing it? Travel works essentially the same here as on the plane of air. The gravity is subjective, so you merely choose a down direction and you will fall that way. However, since vision is so limited here by the smoke, this can be extremely dangerous as you never know if you're going to run into a solid object at terminal velocity. Properties. Okay, so first let's discuss the physical properties of the plane of smoke. First up is breathing. Since it lies between the planes of air and fire, the plane of smoke is the result of air constantly being consumed by fire. Thus, there is no breathable air left. Additionally, the smoke here is hot, thick, and toxic, like my ex-girlfriend. Visitors that need to breathe and that are not protected from its effects immediately die upon inhaling the fumes. Spells such as Breathe Smoke, or a modified airy water or water breathing spell modified to work with smoke, will protect one from this. Vision. The plane of smoke has no light, but assuming you can surpass this hurdle, you can still only see about 30 feet, as the vapors block vision further than that. Although the creatures native to the plane can see twice as far, and the smoke para-elementals and smoke mephits can see 3 times as far. Infravision functions poorly as the background heat of the plane washes everything out except the hottest of objects. Gravity. As mentioned earlier, the plane has subjective gravity, meaning you can choose what your down direction is and fall that way. Magical. So now let's get into the magical properties of the plane. In 1st edition, there were actually no magical properties. However, in 2nd edition, there are a few. Earth and water magic is diminished, meaning the caster is treated as 1 level lower, and spells of 4th level or higher are impossible without a spell key. Conjuration spells can only conjure beings from the plane of smoke, or a bordering plane, so the planes of fire, air, radiance, lightning, vacuum, and ash. As usual for magical properties in Planescape, these only affect arcane spellcasters, so magic users that get their power from the gods are not affected by these. Instead, they are treated as a level lower for each plane between this plane and the one their god resides in. Spell keys that let wizards overcome the detrimental magical properties on the plane of smoke take the form of vapors that must be inhaled during the spellcasting. These can be put into incense that one lights when spellcasting, laced into pipeweed, or even liquids that create clouds of vapor when mixed properly. Encounters. So what environmental hazards are on the plane of smoke? So first, like all inner planes, you have elemental pockets. These are pockets of other elements from the other inner planes that find their way here. Air pockets are gaps of clear space, fire pockets are freestanding fireballs, etc. Explosive pockets. The accumulation of gases sometimes results in pockets of explosive vapors. If an open flame touches it, it explodes, consuming all gases in the pocket and deals 2d20 damage on a failed save versus breath weapon and half on a success. The last encounter are hotspots. These are sections of smoke that have just recently manifested from the scorching of air, making them hotter than the rest of the plane. Creatures entering these areas suffer the same effects as entering the plane of fire, which you can learn by watching my video on the plane of fire, but essentially they take a bunch of damage and they risk having their items incinerated. Inhabitants. The inhabitants of the plane of smoke aren't outright hostile, but they will take advantage of travelers and kill troublemakers. Many mercenaries come here to fight for either the Ifrit or Jinn. The Ifrit pay better, but the Jinn are better to work with, as the Ifrit sometimes just take you as a permanent slave. So first let's discuss the creatures native to the para-elemental plane of smoke. The elementals native to the para-elemental plane of smoke are called the smoke para-elementals, since they're on a para-elemental plane. They are misty or sooty in appearance, looking similar to air elementals with dust trapped inside them. Smoke para-elementals form kingdoms ruled by smoke dukes. These territories sometimes overlap with those of the smoke methods, but the creatures seem to coexist peacefully while hating their neighbors of air and fire. Smoke methods. Smoke methods are the most numerous creatures on the plane. They are lazy, crude, value trickery and misdirection, and have hugely inflated egos. Most of them serve Ekok, the Smoldering Duke, which I will talk about in a moment. Belkers. These are 7 to 9 foot tall creatures made of wisping smoke with black bat-like wings, clawed hands, and wicked fangs. Many presume them to be of fiendish origin, given their evil-looking appearance, and while they are neutral evil, they are still just elementals and not fiends. While they are primarily composed of smoke, they are still relatively solid, but they can transform into a gaseous form of pure smoke at will. A common combat tactic of theirs was to turn to smoke, let their air-breathing opponent breathe them in, then turn one of their claws corporeal to kill them from the inside out. While they can choose which parts of their body turn into smoke, their wings always remain solid. While in smoke form, they are immune to non-magical weapons, their magic resistance is doubled, they take double damage from cold damage, a gust of wind spell flings them up to a mile away, and a wind wall spell traps them as if affected by hold person. In all forms, they are immune to fire, poison, paralyzation, and petrification. They can also damage other creatures in gaseous forms, even if they are usually untouchable. They are fairly solitary creatures, but will group up to hunt together or procreate. They primarily feed on vapor rats or smoke methods, but they will eat flesh and blood creatures. The last native to the plane of smoke are soot beasts. These are 10-foot-long animals with shaggy black hair matted with soot and a toothless maw that continuously belches smoke. They are blind and stupid. Animals. A large number of aerial creatures such as birds have made their homes here. Additionally, they have somehow adapted to the toxicity of the plane, allowing them to breathe without dying here. Whether they achieve this by magic or other means, no one really knows. And they tend to be larger than their prime material counterparts. Of course, there are also smoke animentals and fundamentals, the former taking the shape of prime material animals and the latter being tiny winged creatures, both made from smoke, but I talk more about animentals and fundamentals in my video on the inner planes. Monsters. The paraplane of smoke is home to vapor rats, which are giant rats that can assume gaseous form, renegade Jinn and Ifrit who have established small kingdoms here trying to recruit the natives to fight the other, and, according to the rumors, winged drow. Major players. The first powerful creature on the plane of smoke is Ekok the Smoldering Duke, a highly intelligent and charismatic smoke mephit who has persuaded many creatures, including smoke para-elementals and even some Jinn and Ifrit, to work for him. His goals are unknown, caring little for happenings outside the plane, and slowly furthering his influence even within the plane. 4th edition seems to have buffed him, upgrading him from a mere smoke mephit to a more powerful creature steeped in mystery. According to 4th edition, rumors abound about his true nature, such as him being an abnormally intelligent elemental, the offspring of an Ifrit and a Jinn, or the child or fragment of a slain primordial. He values knowledge greatly, storing lore of all kinds in his choking palace, and spending most of his time writing journals. Gifts and flattery quickly gains his favor, and he particularly enjoys ever-smoking bottles and braziers of sleep smoke. He has the largest collection of pipeweed and smoking implements in the multiverse, and he and all his minions are almost always seen partaking in some sort of inhalant, incense, or smoked substance. The other major player on the Plane of Smoke is Jay Burninghand, a fire genasi who is the proxy of Hashitzini, a Navajo fire god. He has skin as black as coal and the head of a hawk with white-hot glowing eyes. His gaze can cause any object to burst into flames. He was sent here by Hashitzini to observe the denizens of the Plane of Smoke, but exactly why, no one knows. Locations. The Choking Palace, although 4th edition changed its name to The Fume, is a floating castle made of gray-black iron that Ecock the Smoke Method rules from. The palace is obviously naturally smoky due to the properties of the plane, but every room has a brazier burning in it, which fills the chambers with a magical haze that is transparent to those who sincerely serve Ecock, but opaque to all others. Additionally, everyone who stands in the magical smoke can always be seen by the Duke himself. Ecock values knowledge, so his palace is filled with valuable lore and records. Additionally, it holds his gargantuan collection of pipeweed, smoking instruments, and other incense, inhalants, and smoked substances. Cinderwood. Cinderwood is an archipelago of thousands of cinders, ranging in size from a fingernail to a small mountain. The cinders are some of the only solid ground in the plane. Not that they're actually solid or ground, so many creatures make their homes here. They are flaky, brittle, and soft, so only a skilled hand could actually carve any sort of cave, tunnel, or shelter into one. The Hidden City. A floating city constructed in the Plane of Smoke to keep it hidden in the choking fumes. Enchantments keep the air clear and breathable, but the plane still taints everything with soot and smoke damage. Despite the fact that it floats, it is completely stationary. The ruling family leads from a blackened palace which floats above the city center, and for the past 8 generations have always produced twins which rule cooperatively. The Hidden City is accommodating to travelers, selling food and water at reasonable prices. It gets the water from a spring it is built on top of, which physically a spring shouldn't exist on the Plane of Smoke, yet somehow this one does. Perhaps it is a vortex to the plane of water. According to the citizens, Ecock the Smoldering Duke wants to conquer the Hidden City for himself, and scours the plane looking for it, but is never successful. Enchantments allow the twin rulers to decide who can and can't find the city. Rhinesong's Ashen Fortress. A fortress constructed of solid ash and smoke by the cloud giant Rhinesong. He keeps a large army of Grell here, which thrive in the Plane of Smoke's environment. They are ordered to attack anyone who comes near the fortress, and Rhinesong even occasionally wanders the plane looking for creatures to attack for no apparent reason. The legend goes that he was a good giant living in a giant community on the quasi-plane of Steam. He desired the wife of another, so her husband cursed him, casting him into the paraplane of smoke for eternity, and placed an evil spirit inside his body. He has gained mastery of his own flesh, but if he ever lets his guard down, the wicked spirit will take control. This state of physical and mental imprisonment has driven Rhinesong insane. It is rumored the castle is filled with enormous amounts of treasure and wealth, all received from those Rhinesong has slain, or as vain tribute attempts to stop his attacks. The last location on the Plane of Smoke is the Valley of the Blinding Mist. In the Scald, the region that borders the Plane of Fire, the smoke is so thick it becomes essentially impassable. The Valley of the Blinding Mist is an opening in this smoke, allowing travelers to access the Plane of Fire. The Ifrit use this as a staging ground to wage their war against the Jinn. And that is all of the information I could find on the para-elemental Plane of Smoke. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and remember to subscribe for more D&D related content.